China is openly defying US sanctions, secretly buying Iran's oil through a shadow, dark fleet. Tankers go dark, crude changes hands at sea, and billions flow straight into Tehran's war chest. Washington protests. Beijing calls it legitimate trade. But the reality is clear. US sanctions are collapsing on the high seas. A CBS News investigation has revealed that China is still secretly buying Iranian oil and evading US sanctions by using what's known as a dark fleet to transfer oil from ship to ship in the middle of the sea. Over the years, the US has implemented heavy sanctions on Iranian industries, including trying to stop tankers used to transfer Iranian oil to China, which could help fund Iranian nuclear development programs. On July 30th, the Treasury Department imposed additional sanctions, which Washington called the most extensive action of its kind since 2018. Recently, a CBS News crew set off from Singapore, one of the busiest shipping ports in the world, to head more than 80 nautical miles away in international waters to see how the dark fleet operates.
As long as there's a supply, there will be a demand for this discounted oil.
The supply is Iran, the demand is China, and this mutually beneficial relationship, which has long angered the United States, plays out off the coast of Malaysia in the Riau archipelago, an area the size of New York City. Brown also showed the CBS team the Dark Fleet parking center. Brown has been monitoring the Dark Fleet for years and described one ship, the Defies, as a well-known Dark Fleet tanker. The tankers, full of oil, sail from the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Malacca to the Riau archipelago. There, they transfer the crude to ships bound for China, which buys 90% of Iran's oil. During the CBS News crew's journey, 4 ship-to-ship transfers were happening in plain sight. The Dark Fleet tankers had all their transponders switched off as they did not want to be identified. Further analysis revealed that one ship was the elusive Stella Oracle, laden with Iranian oil. It was placed on the US sanctions list in May. Close by, another ship-to-ship transfer was underway, filled with Iranian crude that was also sanctioned in May. The receiving vessel Eon, which is not on any list, was caught in the act, a new sanctions violator. According to a congressional report last year, this trade generated as much as $70 billion for Iran, propping up the regime and its alleged nuclear weapons program. The Trump administration has imposed multiple rounds of sanctions on this trade this year, but it's having little effect. China doesn't recognize the unilateral US sanctions on Iran and says that its trade with Iran is legitimate. By the end of the day, the CBS crew recorded 12 ship-to-ship transfers in the Riau archipelago, an unprecedented number and a clear indication that Iran and China are only ramping up this illicit activity. China is the main buyer of oil from Iran, which accounts for roughly 13.6% of purchases this year by the world's largest crude importer, leaving Beijing uniquely exposed to any supply disruption from conflict in the Middle East. China buys roughly 90% of Iran's shipped oil, which has limited buyers due to US sanctions aimed at cutting off funding to Tehran's nuclear program. In the first 6 months of 2025 itself, China purchased an average of 1.38 million barrels per day of Iranian oil, according to Kepler data. According to Kepler, China's Iran purchases in 2024 averaged 1.48 million barrels per day, or about 14.6% of China's imports. Chinese independent refiners known as teapots, clustered mainly in Shandong province, are the main buyers of Iranian crude, drawn by its discount to non-sanctioned barrels. Teapots, which account for roughly 1/4 of Chinese refinery capacity, operate on narrow and sometimes negative margins and have been squeezed recently by tepid domestic demand for refined products. Traders and experts have said that China's big state oil companies have, however, refrained from buying Iranian oil since 2018 to 19. Meanwhile, the US Treasury Department announced fresh sanctions on July 30th on over 115 Iran-linked individuals, entities and vessels in a sign the Trump administration is doubling down on its maximum pressure campaign after bombing Tehran's key nuclear sites in June. The sanctions broadly target the shipping interests of Mohammad Hossein Shamkhani, the son of Ali Shamkhani, who is himself an advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The US Treasury said it was the most significant Iran-related sanctions action since 2018 during President Donald Trump's first administration. According to the Treasury, Shamkhani controls a vast network of container ships and tankers through a complex web of intermediaries that sell Iranian and Russian oil and other goods throughout the world. Treasury accused Shamkhani of using personal connections and corruption in Tehran to generate tens of billions of dollars in profits, much of which is used to prop up the Iranian regime. Overall, the new sanctions target 15 shipping firms, 52 vessels, 12 individuals, and 53 entities involved in sanctions evasion in 17 countries, ranging from Panama to Italy to Hong Kong. A US official said the new sanctions would make it much more difficult for Iran to sell its oil, but added that the administration did not anticipate any sustained disruption to global oil markets. Analysts said that China's oil imports from Iran surged in June as shipments accelerated before the recent conflict between Israel and Iran and demand from independent refineries improved. The world's top oil importer and biggest buyer of Iranian crude brought in more than 1.8 million barrels per day from June 1st. 20, according to ship tracker VERTEX, a record high based on the firm's data. Kepler data showed the rising imports were fueled in part by an increase in available supplies from floating storage after export loadings from Iran reached a multi-year high of 1.83 million barrels per day in May. It typically takes at least 1 month for Iranian oil to reach Chinese ports. Kepler and VERTEX analysts said robust loadings in May and early June mean China's imports from Iran are poised to remain elevated. Kepler's senior analyst Xu Muyu said that independent Chinese teapot refineries, the main buyers of Iranian oil, also showed strong demand as their stockpiles depleted, adding that a possible relaxation of US sanctions on Iranian oil could further bolster Chinese buying. US President Donald Trump said that Washington had not given up its maximum pressure campaign on Iran, including restrictions on Iranian oil sales, but signaled a potential easing in enforcement to help the country rebuild.